Why must they be punished like that? The words were raw, honest, echoing with a father's heartbreak, torn not only by royal decisions but by the impact those choices had on the very people he swore to protect, his children. In a deeply revealing and emotional interview, Prince Joachim of Denmark broke his silence on a matter that has rocked the Danish royal household to its very foundations. The prince, once a quieter presence in the background of royal life, is now the beating heart of a storm involving identity, legacy, and a mother's controversial decree. 2 years ago, Queen Margrethe II, then the reigning monarch, issued a formal and shocking announcement. Her grandchildren from Prince Joachim, Prince Nikolai, Prince Felix, Prince Henrik, and Princess Athena, would no longer carry the titles of Prince or Princess of Denmark. Instead, they would become Counts and Countess of Montpezat, a noble but less public-facing designation, devoid of the gravitas that comes with royalty. And now, the aftermath is finally being laid bare. Prince Joachim, speaking in an emotionally raw interview, has publicly expressed what many have whispered in corners of royal circles, that this decision wasn't just protocol, it was personal. And it left his children, as he heartbreakingly described, not knowing which leg to stand on. It was in September 2022 when the Danish royal house, through an official statement, revealed that as of January 1, 2023, 4 of Queen Margrethe's grandchildren would no longer be princes and princesses. The decision, they said, was meant to give the younger generation freedom to live a more normal life, free from the constraints and expectations of royal duties. But was that the real reason? And if so, why did it only apply to Prince Joachim's children, and not to Crown Prince Frederik's? This is where things begin to unfold in a tangled web of royal protocol, family fractures, and decades of tension buried beneath the polished surface of Denmark's beloved royal family. To understand the full magnitude of the emotional wound Prince Joachim has publicly exposed, we must revisit the roots of the Danish monarchy's modern structure. Prince Joachim, the younger son of Queen Margrethe II and Prince Henrik, has always walked a path slightly removed from the royal spotlight. A military man, a father, and a diplomat, he carved his identity through service rather than ceremony. Meanwhile, his older brother, Crown Prince Frederik, is the heir. His children, Prince Christian, Princess Isabella, Prince Vincent, and Princess Josephine, retain their titles, full status, and all the expectations that come with their royal heritage. And therein lies the heartbreak. Joachim's children, by virtue of their father's position, have been told, albeit diplomatically, that their royal identity is no longer valid. They were born with those titles. It's not something they chose, Prince Joachim said, visibly pained. It's not something they asked for. And now, they are told they're no longer princes and princesses. What message does that send? For any parent, the idea of your children questioning their identity, especially one bestowed at birth, is a profound grief. But when that identity is erased by your own mother, the reigning monarch, the emotional weight becomes unbearable. Joachim did not mince words. Why must they be punished like that? He asked the Danish media, his voice trembling not with rage, but with sorrow. The removal of titles wasn't just symbolic. It was, in Joachim's eyes, a message that his branch of the family was being trimmed from the royal tree. That his children were lesser. They are confused, hurt. They don't understand why this happened, he continued. They've done nothing wrong. When the royal house first announced the decision, Queen Margrethe framed it as a modernization effort. The monarchy, she suggested, needed to be slimmed down to meet the needs of a changing society. The move, she added, was made to allow the children to shape their own lives without being limited by the special considerations and duties associated with royal titles. But the question remains, why only Joachim's children? Why not Frederik's? Royal analysts and Danish commentators have pondered the same. And whispers of favoritism, internal tension, and a long-standing rift between the queen and her younger son have gained traction. Some argue this was a way for the crown to prepare for King Frederik X's reign, keeping the line of succession crystal clear, and distancing the non-heir branch from royal obligations. But at what cost? This isn't the first time Prince Joachim has been on the margins of the royal circle. In fact, his relationship with Queen Margrethe has long been described as formal, lacking the warm familial closeness seen in other royal households. And the tension deepened in 2019 when Joachim was sent to Paris to serve as a military attaché, a move many saw as a subtle exile. Was it a coincidence that the stripping of titles occurred while Joachim and his family were still stationed in France? It felt like a decision made without real discussion. We were told, not consulted, Joachim said in the interview. Prince Nikolai, now a prominent model with an international career, was the first to speak out. It was shocking, he admitted. We were blindsided. His younger brother, Prince Felix, and half-siblings, Prince Henrik and Princess Athena, have largely remained quiet, likely shielded by age and circumstance. But the effects are visible. Joachim mentioned how they began asking questions, how they hesitated when introduced in public, how they looked to him for answers he wasn't ready to give. How do you tell a child that who they are has changed? The public reaction in Denmark has been split. Some support the Queen's decision, citing similar moves by other royal households, such as in Sweden and the UK. But others see the human cost. We want a modern monarchy, yes, one commentator said, but modernity doesn't mean cruelty. Royal watchers have also noted the stark contrast in treatment between the Crown Prince's family and Joachim's. It's impossible to ignore the shadow of Prince Henrik, Queen Margrethe's late husband and Joachim's father. Prince Henrik, a French-born nobleman who struggled for decades to be seen as equal to his wife, likely influenced his son's perceptions of identity and fairness. In many ways, Prince Joachim's pain echoes his father's lifelong frustrations. Both men sought recognition. Both men, it seems, were denied. As of now, Joachim remains a loyal representative of the Danish crown. But the emotional chasm between him and his mother seems wider than ever. Will the titles ever be restored? Unlikely. But the conversation has only just begun. Prince Joachim has lit a match. And the world is watching. This story is not just about royal titles. It's about identity, belonging, family dynamics, and emotional truth. It's about a father fighting not for power or prestige, but for his children's place in history. Whether one agrees with Queen Margrethe or sides with Prince Joachim, one thing is certain: this moment will be remembered as a defining fracture in Denmark's royal legacy. And now, dear viewers, we want to hear from you. Do you believe Queen Margrethe was right to strip Prince Joachim's children of their titles, or was it a cruel decision that went too far? Let us know in the comments. The emotional resonance of Prince Joachim's words, "Why must they be punished like that?" reverberated far beyond the palace walls. It triggered not just media debates, but deeply personal reflections across Denmark and beyond. What does it mean to belong in a royal family? Is royal status a burden, a gift, or both? Within days of the announcement, Danish media outlets were flooded with reactions. Call-in radio shows, comment sections, and televised debates reflected a nation divided. Supporters of Queen Margrethe leaned into logic and modernity. It's the right decision. Royals should serve a purpose, not just wear a title. Less pressure on the children. They can choose their own path now. But supporters of Prince Joachim spoke from the heart. Titles or not, this was handled without grace. Stripping identity from children is cruel. Why only Joachim's children? This feels targeted. They were born into this. On social media, hashtags like #StandWithJoachim, #RoyalFairness, and #NotJustTitles began trending. Some users pointed to the apparent favoritism shown toward Crown Prince Frederic's family, stirring resentment that had quietly brewed for years. A global gaze. The world watches Denmark's royal house. International observers drew comparisons with other monarchies. In Sweden, King Carl XVI Gustaf had made a similar move in 2019, removing royal status from his grandchildren not in direct line to the throne. But the announcement had been framed with kindness, and the children retained their princely titles for life. In the United Kingdom, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's decision to step away from royal duties, and the ensuing revocation of honors, provided a parallel, though that situation involved self-exile, not forced identity removal. But what shocked many was Denmark's unexpected harshness, especially from a monarch so deeply loved. Queen Margrethe has always been the grandmother of the nation, one royal historian told Danish broadcaster TV2. This move feels like the iron hand beneath the velvet glove. Media coverage. From sympathy to scandal. Tabloids played up the drama. Headlines splashed across Europe with words like betrayal, family feud, and royal exile. Meanwhile, Quality broadsheets and royal biographers struck a more reflective tone. Long columns examined the history of Joachim's isolation, Queen Margrethe's long-held traditionalist views, the growing pressure for leaner monarchies in democratic Europe. A particularly poignant editorial in Politiken read, "This is not merely the story of 4 children losing titles. It is the story of how identity, when shaped by crown and court, can also be unraveled by it." Psychological insights. What does title loss mean to a royal child? To the average person, losing a title may seem trivial. After all, isn't being ordinary easier? But psychologists argue otherwise. Dr. Eva Madsen, a child development expert in Copenhagen, says the impact can be deep and lasting. From early childhood, these children were addressed as Your Highness. Their schooling, social circle, even sense of purpose revolved around their role. Removing that in adolescence or early adulthood can cause identity fragmentation. And indeed, Prince Joachim himself hinted at this in his interviews. He mentioned how the children asked, "What do we say now?" when people ask who we are. That question, simple yet profound, underscores a crisis of belonging. The Queen's silence, dignified authority or emotional distance. After the initial media storm, Queen Margrethe made a brief, carefully worded apology, not for the decision itself, but for how it had affected the children. "I have made this decision as a queen, a mother, and a grandmother. But I recognize that it has hurt," she said. Yet for many, the damage was done. Body language experts analyzed footage of the Queen and Prince Joachim at recent family events, noting tense eye contact, formal posture, and no physical affection. One expert noted, "This is not just a constitutional gap. This is an emotional rupture. From princes to counts, what life looks like now." Since the title removal, each of Joachim's children has taken a different path. Count Nikolai continues his modeling career in Paris and Tokyo but has noticeably withdrawn from Danish media. Count Felix, once touted as the gentle royal, has started studies in business but avoids public comment. Count Henrik and Countess Athena, still in their teens, have largely been shielded, but close sources report that their friends now refer to them without royal address, creating awkward social adjustments. Joachim and his wife Princess Marie still retain their royal titles, though Marie herself has expressed quiet dismay over the Queen's move. "They are good children," she said in a French interview. "They deserve better." Whispers from within. The royal family's quiet divide. Insiders suggest that Crown Prince Frederik and Princess Mary have remained neutral, but the silence speaks volumes. "There has been no public solidarity," said a former royal aide. "It's as if Joachim's family is now on the outside looking in." A monarchy in transition. Symbolism versus sentiment. As King Frederick X now assumes the throne, he inherits more than ceremonial duties. He inherits a family torn, a monarchy under emotional scrutiny, and a country asking whether tradition should ever come at the expense of empathy. And while Denmark remains proud of its royal institution, Prince Joachim's words have left a mark. Because beneath the protocol, beneath the crowns and regalia, is a man, a father, who watched his children go from princes and princesses to commoners. And all he could do was ask, why must they be punished like that? If a crown is a symbol of honor, tradition, and responsibility, what happens when it's taken away? In the wake of Queen Margrethe's historic decision, the 4 children of Prince Joachim were thrust into a spotlight not of privilege, but of loss. But behind the royal titles and media headlines lie 4 distinct individuals, each navigating the crossroads of royalty and identity in their own unique way. Count Nikolai of Montpezat, the model prince with a lost kingdom. Born in 1999 to Prince Joachim and his first wife, Alexandra, Countess of Frederiksberg, Nikolai was once hailed as the next-generation Danish heartthrob, a modern royal with the poise of a prince and the cool of a cosmopolitan. As His Highness Prince Nikolai of Denmark, he attended elite schools, spoke flawless English, and moved easily between palace life and youth culture. But unlike many royals, Nikolai walked the runway. In 2018, he signed with Scoop Models and debuted at London Fashion Week, walking for Burberry and Dior, turning heads and shattering the mold of what a prince could be. He became known as the Fashion Prince, commanding campaigns in Paris, Milan, and Tokyo, balancing his studies in business with his modeling career. "I was shocked. My parents were too," Nikolai said in a rare interview. "I didn't expect it to hit so hard, but it did." Since becoming Count Nikolai of Montpezat, his public presence has shifted. He pulled back from Danish media, choosing to reside mostly in Paris with his longtime girlfriend Benedict the Struck. Paparazzi photos still catch him strolling through the Marais or sipping espresso in Montmartre, but always at a distance, always with a hint of exile. Those close to him say he is still, every inch a prince, even if the world no longer calls him one. Count Felix of Montpezat, the quiet charmer. 2 years younger than Nikolai, Count Felix was always considered the more reserved of the brothers. With his boyish charm and quiet grace, he preferred sailing and football to fashion, but remained a much-loved figure among royal watchers. As a child prince, he stood beside his brother during public engagements, always smiling, always composed. But since losing his title, Felix has gone silent. He enrolled in business studies in Copenhagen and avoids interviews. His Instagram, once occasionally updated with glimpses of youth and travel, has gone inactive. Insiders say he was deeply affected by the title loss, not out of vanity, but because it changed how others treated him. At school, he went from Prince Felix to just Felix, and it was jarring for some of his classmates more than him, said a friend. He's trying to live normally, but when your name changes overnight, how do you feel normal? Count Henrik of Montpezat, the sensitive soul at a crossroads. Born in 2009, Henrik was just 13 when the royal titles were removed. At an age where identity begins to crystallize, Henrik found the very foundation of his identity removed. He asked if he had done something wrong, Prince Joachim told the press. Unlike his older brothers, Henrik was still living at home and still attending school as a titled royal when the change was announced. The impact was immediate. Classmates began asking questions. Teachers struggled with the shift. Even adults hesitated. And Henrik, named after his beloved late grandfather Prince Henrik, now bore the title but not the legacy. He is known to be a quiet, curious child who loves history and nature. Family friends describe him as deeply intelligent but emotionally tender, someone who may one day write a memoir or become a historian. For now, he simply asks why he is no longer a prince. Countess Athena of Montpezat, a young girl with a stolen fairy tale. The youngest of Prince Joachim's children, Countess Athena was born in 2012. Her birth was celebrated with warmth and wonder, the first daughter in Joachim's line. Until 2022, she was Her Highness Princess Athena of Denmark, attending official events, walking hand in hand with her mother Princess Marie, and always addressed with affection by palace staff and the press. But then, the fairy tale cracked. At just 10 years old, Athena's identity was rewritten by royal decree. She doesn't understand, Princess Marie said, tears welling in her voice during an interview. She wonders if she is still special. Athena, now 13, continues her education in Switzerland, where her parents moved in part to escape the media glare. But the weight of what happened lingers. She no longer appears at Danish royal events. She no longer holds the word, princess. But in the hearts of many Danes, she will always be one. Queen Margrethe's decision wasn't made in isolation. Monarchies across Europe are slimming down. In Sweden, King Carl XVI Gustaf removed royal status from his grandchildren, excluding Crown Princess Victoria's children. Yet, they retained their princely titles. In Norway, Princess Martha Louise stepped away from royal duties but kept her title. In the UK, Harry and Meghan's children, Archie and Lilibet, were denied titles at birth, only to later be styled prince and princess when Charles became king. But none of these moves had the cold finality of Denmark's. Only in Copenhagen were children stripped of identity, while cousins retained theirs. Many observers saw this as targeted pruning, a decision that favored the crown prince's line while casting Joachim's family into shadows. It wasn't just modernizing, it was about power, said one royal commentator. And children became collateral damage. Where do they go from here? Prince Joachim and Princess Marie have relocated to Washington, D.C., where Joachim now serves as the defense attaché at the Danish embassy. The children visit Denmark rarely. Nikolai and Felix live mostly in France. Henrik and Athena now experience Denmark as visitors, not heirs. And yet, their Danish blood, noble, royal, storied, remains unchanged. They are still grandchildren of a queen. Still descendants of centuries-old lineage. Still the faces of a forgotten branch of a living monarchy. The story of Prince Joachim and his children isn't just about titles. It's about what happens when tradition meets transition. When family meets institution. When love must live within protocol. And when a grandmother must choose between monarchy and memory. As viewers, we must ask, was this the price of progress? Or the mistake of a matriarch? Can the scars left on these children ever truly heal? When history is written, it often focuses on kings and queens, battles and decrees, glory and power. But sometimes, the most powerful figures are those who stand quietly at the edge of the spotlight, watching, enduring, and holding a family together when the kingdom around them begins to fracture. That figure, in this story, is Princess Marie of Denmark. Once a foreign-born commoner, now the poised and eloquent wife of Prince Joachim, Marie has become something far more than a supporting royal. She is the emotional center of a family that lost everything but each other. From Paris to Copenhagen, the making of a modern princess. Born in Paris in 1976, Marie Cavalier was raised in Switzerland, France, and the United States. She was educated in Geneva and New York, fluent in 5 languages, and lived a worldly life before ever setting foot in a palace. In 2005, she met Prince Joachim during a private dinner in Denmark. What began as a friendship blossomed into love, and in 2008, they were married in a stunning ceremony that fused Danish tradition with French elegance. From the very beginning, Marie brought a soft strength to the royal family. Never one to compete for attention, she adapted quickly to protocol, learned Danish fluently, and embraced a wide array of royal duties. She wasn't flashy, but she was consistent, thoughtful, loyal, and perhaps most important of all, she was fiercely protective of her children. A princess in exile, when the palace walls closed in. For years, Princess Marie worked quietly alongside her husband, supporting royal charities, focusing on humanitarian issues, and representing Denmark with grace. But when the announcement came in September 2022 that her children, Henrik and Athena, would be stripped of their royal titles, something shifted. Suddenly, the woman known for her discretion found her voice. "It is so difficult to explain to our children that their identity is changing," she told Danish outlet BT, visibly emotional. "It's a matter of identity. It's not just titles. It's about how the children view themselves." Those few words made headlines, not because they were controversial, but because they were raw, real, and rare. For the first time, Denmark saw the fire behind Marie's calm. A mother whose heartbreak could no longer be hidden behind palace walls. And behind the scenes, insiders revealed, Marie was devastated. She had devoted herself to the Danish royal family. She had raised her children with pride in their heritage. And now, without warning, they were cast aside, not by strangers, but by their own grandmother. While Prince Joachim addressed the press in interviews with measured frustration, Marie did something different. She shielded her children. She removed them from public view. She stopped attending certain royal events. She relocated the family to Washington, D.C., where Joachim had taken a diplomatic posting, choosing a life of service outside Denmark's borders, and far from the royal court that had turned cold. It was a quiet protest. One that spoke volumes. The palace response, a deafening silence. When Princess Marie voiced her heartbreak publicly, many expected a response from Queen Margrethe or Crown Prince Frederik. It never came. There was no official apology. No press conference. No clarification. The palace stood by its position, citing the monarch's desire to streamline the royal house and create clarity for the future. But behind the scenes, there were whispers of deep tension between Marie and certain senior courtiers, some of whom reportedly saw her as too vocal or too attached to the titles. There were elements in the palace who never fully embraced Marie, one royal insider told Say Og Hor. She was too strong-willed for their liking. A shadow queen. The rising influence of Marie abroad. In Washington, Princess Marie has found a new voice and new power. While she no longer carries the full weight of royal duties, she now serves as a public speaker, cultural ambassador, and quiet advocate for diplomatic causes, especially those involving education and child rights. In fact, many observers have noted that Marie has never looked more poised, more confident, more sovereign, even as her formal status was reduced. She has become in many ways, a shadow queen, not in title, but in spirit. As King Frederick takes the throne, many are watching closely to see whether his leadership will bring reconciliation. But Marie's presence remains a challenge to the institution, because she refuses to be silent, and refuses to allow her children to be forgotten. She reminds the monarchy and the nation that this story is not just about protocol. It is about people, children, parents, legacy, and love. A princess redefined. In many ways, Marie has become a symbol of strength in exile. Of a mother's fight for identity. Of what it means to belong without permission. She is not seeking revenge or scandal. She is simply asking that her children be seen, remembered, and valued. And in that quiet but unwavering insistence, she has become one of the most compelling figures in the modern monarchy. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful royal stories, exclusive behind-the-scenes access, and emotional tales from the world's most fascinating families.